Hello and welcome to an Orbiter 2016 video series. This is Tex and this will be part 3 of our rescue flight series. Let's jump right in. So here we are at the fuel service station. We have launched into orbit and rendezvoused and docked, and we've also completely filled up our vessel with fuel. So far the mission elapsed timer is at 1 day and 11 hours and 36 minutes. So we're on a mission to get up to the XR5 that's stranded up in geosynchronous orbit. The crew is believed to be dead, so we have two US Air Force crew members on board with us that will take control of the XR5 when we get there. The challenging part is we need to get there with enough fuel to transfer a significant amount that it's useful for the XR5 to perform a deorbit burn from such a high altitude. We also only have about 3 days and 12 hours of oxygen remaining. That's for 7 crew members. We're going to lose 2 of those crew members, so we should be good to go. Alright, so we are powered down and docked mode here. What we need to do, we need to take a look at where we stand as far as getting up to the XR5 now. So, tell you what, let's power up our MFDs. And let me jump into the glass cockpit. It might be easier for you guys to see this. So let's take a look. Let's do a line plane first, because the XR5, if you will recall from our mission briefing, was not at the same inclination. Okay, so it's already gone up to 29.83 degrees. That's definitely significant. That's 254 seconds of burn time. And that's going to waste too much fuel. Alright, so we know that we have a couple of options. Let me target XR5 on the orbit MFD. Alright, so, you know, clearly, wow, it's really high up there, of course, geosynchronous orbit. So we need to consider it's going to take a lot of fuel for us to get from low Earth orbit all the way up to geosynchronous orbit. So we can rendezvous, but we also need to align our orbital plane first, and that's going to take some fuel too. We know that we could raise our orbit altitude at one of the nodes, and it would take less fuel to align our orbital plane when we're further away from the planet. However, I think that even that's going to take too much fuel. So we're going to get a little creative. We're going to use the atmosphere because it uses a lot less fuel to raise and lower our orbit altitude than it does to change our orbital plane, certainly at low Earth orbit anyways. So if I do a retrograde burn at one of the nodes, say if I do a retrograde burn here at the approaching descending node, and I lower our altitude at the ascending node side so that it's in the atmosphere, we could use the atmosphere to perform a turn, if you will, and that will bring down relative inclination. Of course, it will reduce our orbital velocity, so we'll have to do a prograde burn in order to raise it back up, but I believe it will take considerably less fuel to do that. Okay, so let's take a look. So we're at the night side now, so I believe I'll go ahead and do that here. We need to get there as soon as possible, just in case the crew isn't dead, but pretty sure they are. I'll change that to that. Let's target the XR5. Okay, so check it out when we go to ground track, the orbit of the XR5 there in geosynchronous orbit. It's not a perfect geosynchronous orbit, actually. I set it up, but it's you know, with the orbit being perturbed, non-spherical gravity sources again are on. It's not perfect, but it's still a challenging mission being up that high. So okay, so let's I guess we can go ahead and prepare to undock here, and we're going to do a retrograde burn at the descending node. Alright, so let's go back over here to the main panel view. Let's turn the APU on, and let's turn our lights on, strobe on, nav on. Let's see, let's go ahead and deploy the radiator. Let's go orbit HUD, linear RCS on, external cooling off, and okay, so that looks good. Okay, we're good to undock. So dock release.
Undocking confirmed.
Undocking confirmed. Let's translate back just a bit. Okay, let's close our nose cone. And let's I'll go ahead and translate back just a bit more. Alright. So all we need to do now is coast around to the descending node, and we're going to do a burn there to lower our altitude. Let me go ahead and open, first of all, turn APU off. Let me open some external MFDs. That way we can stay in this cockpit view, but maybe you guys can see this a little better if I make these bigger. Let me know in the comments below if you like that with the external MFDs open, and I'll start doing that. Because I do like this panel view. Again, Doug, if you happen to be watching this and you're going to do an update to the XR series anytime, I would love to see these MFDs bigger. I don't know, that sounds like it's probably pretty hard to do. That's beyond me. But anyways, let's check out the fuel service station as we coast away there. It looks pretty cool. The lights are... Our lights shining on it are getting dimmer and dimmer as we move away. Definitely a really cool station to rendezvous with. Alright, so obviously we don't need all of these on orbit. So let's put this one on align plane. I tell you what, we're going to go into the atmosphere, so this one will be surface. And this one, let's just go put this on our orbit, so no target. We'll leave our target selected down there. Align plane over here. Okay, that looks good. Alright, so let's time accelerate, and we'll get around to the descending node here. For right now, I can actually pull a line plane over here. It might be more useful. Alright, so let's orient the vessel retrograde. And it won't take very long for us to lower our orbit altitude into the atmosphere. I'm going to aim for around 70 kilometers, 68 kilometers roughly. So we can pretty much wait until we're at the node. So anytime now is really good. So I'll burn with my main engines and we'll watch our periapsis. Bring that to 70 kilometers. Okay, good enough. Alright, let's see. Let's go to prograde. Surface here, and let's get ready for an atmospheric orbital plane alignment maneuver. Don't know if that would be the proper terminology or if it would be realistic to do this, but we're gonna do it. So we'll time accelerate. We'll get down to what would normally be considered entry interface, around 120 kilometers or so. Yeah, you know what? Our periapsis, let me check. Let's see what our interplanetary says our periapsis is going to be. I probably should have looked at that first because it's more accurate. So, periapsis 75 kilometers. It's not too bad. I'd like it to be a little lower. Let me see if we're past the point where I should have done this, but let me just do a little translating back. And see, I'm looking at periapsis over here on the map MFD. I wonder if I translate to the left a little bit makes it any different. It's about the same. So I'm just translating back a little bit, trying to bring that periapsis down a little lower. It's close. Alright, that's probably good enough. So the interplanetary MFD is actually more accurate for telling you your periapsis than the orbit MFD. And it's not, I guess its calculations take into effect the non-spherical gravity sources better. So I probably should have looked at that, but anyway, that's good enough. Okay, let's continue coasting down to around 120, 110 kilometers or so. Make sure we keep the vessel oriented prograde. Let's check out, what are we over right now? It looks like we're over Australia right now. Let me do the map over here. What did I have here? Orbit, I guess? Yes, I did. Orbit MFD. Okay. Just curious. Yep. Okay. Alright, so let's do orbit over here too. No target on that one. Okay, so we're just under 120 there. We'll get down to 110. Okay. So what I'm going to do at this point,
Mach 27 plus.
I'm going to go to this view so that I can put the elevator trim up all the way. Alright, so let's see which node are we're approaching the ascending node. So we're pointed prograde. So if we're approaching the ascending node, we would normally burn anti-normal, which is minus, so that would be down. So what I'm going to do is
Rotation.
roll over the other direction so that we turn in the appropriate direction in order to lower the inclination there. And we'll want to monitor our vertical speed as we descend here, because we don't want to skip out of the atmosphere. We want to just stay in the atmosphere long enough to lower that relative inclination. So we're minimizing the amount of burn time we'll have to do to get that on 0 in preparation for a rendezvous with the XR5. Alright, let me very carefully time accelerate. This is going to be one of those things that we're not really going to be able to time accelerate through, similar to re-entry, because we are in the atmosphere. So I'm just going to roll over a little bit and make sure we don't skip out here. Watching vertical speed, but also vertical acceleration there. I'm going to make sure our vertical acceleration gets to 0, and that way we can control our vertical speed. As we fall into the atmosphere, we'll gain more control of the vessel. Okay, so vertical acceleration hit negative, but we don't want to descend too much. So let's just try and keep that under control. Seems the music almost seems fitting for re-entering the atmosphere. It's definitely a tense moment anytime you're talking about coming into the atmosphere. Something else we also need to consider is we do have a radiator deployed, and obviously we're going to get some heat on the vehicle during this maneuver. So we need to go ahead and get ready to stow that. We don't want to stow it too early because it is providing coolant, cooling down here on the bottom panel. Let's see. Of course that's covering it. Coolant temperature is going to begin to climb, but we should be able to proceed with this maneuver in plenty of time before coolant temperature becomes anywhere near a critical level. Alright, so now our hull temperature is out of the negatives. It's a good time to go ahead and stow our radiator. It just certainly doesn't seem realistic anyways to leave it deployed when you're being hit by more air molecules. But I believe, I'm guessing, but I think when your hull temperatures get above 300 or so, you're going to start getting into critical levels if you have it deployed. Okay, so now that we're in the atmosphere, let's turn on AF control surfaces, airflow control surfaces. You do need the APU on for that, so we'll have to leave the APU on for now. Okay, let's monitor our vertical speed. We're almost down to periapsis here. And you'll notice that our rate change here is negative, so we are beginning to lower our inclination, so this is good. Sort of want to find a balancing point between lowering it as much as we can, but also not descending too much into the atmosphere, which obviously would cause us to lose more velocity. So we're going to lose velocity, but by staying up in the upper atmosphere, it's going to be negligible compared to a full-on re-entry, and it at least gives us control of our vessel so that we can adjust that relative inclination. Alright, so you can see we're beginning to get some heat on the vehicle. We definitely have some plasma going on here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is sort of try to get my vertical speed down to 0 and just fly level, if you will, around this altitude. So I've rolled up. Vertical acceleration is positive. Vertical speed is climbing. Okay, relative inclination is coming down nicely, so alright, so just bear with me. Like I said, unfortunately this is one of those things I'm just not really going to have the luxury of time accelerating. Hopefully this video won't get too long. We're at a little over 15 minutes now. We should have enough time to go ahead and complete this maneuver, and we'll get the orbital plane all aligned and pick it up in the next one. Alright, so our vertical speed is approaching 0. So we'll just try and keep it right there. That'll hold us nicely at this high altitude of 67 kilometers. We've got a nice rate of change there on the aligned plane MFD. So that's looking good.
Mach 25.
Alright, our vertical speed actually went positive. Let's not let that happen. That looks pretty good. Alright. So you'll notice during this braking maneuver here that, or not really braking maneuver, although we are technically braking, but during this atmospheric aligned plane maneuver, looks like our periapsis is now dropped below the surface. Again, not a big deal. We will have to do a little bit of a burn to raise that back up once we're done, but it shouldn't take nearly as much fuel as doing this massive burn over here. Alright. Really the main thing I'm watching right now is my vertical speed, to make sure that we're not really climbing, not descending, just sort of maintaining this altitude. If anything, we'll descend a little bit more, but not too much. As long as we have a negative rate change here, then we're good. We're dropping relative inclination, and you can see the burn time's already dropped under 200 seconds. Alright, and although the XR5 does have a re-entry autopilot, I'm not actually using that right now because for this maneuver I found it was actually easier to just set the trim and manually adjust this. So we'll just proceed and get this relative inclination down. I'm guessing our ground speed is probably going to be somewhere around 7,000 meters per second when we're done with this. Maybe a little bit over, which is still pretty good. We're looking at much less velocity that we would have to regain just to bring our orbit back up.
APU fuel 80%.
Okay, she just said APU fuel is at 80%. We should have plenty of APU fuel. After we're done with this, the only time we ever need the APU is to turn it on very briefly to open things like the nose cone and whatnot, and then we'll need it. We'll need to run it for quite a while when we get back to re-enter, but otherwise we should be fine. So I'm not too worried about that. I guess I had kill rotation on, so it was holding the nose up there. Let's just let the vessel settle down in the atmosphere here. everything's looking great on our vertical speed there. Altitudes within reason. We're never going to be in danger of overheating on this one. Our hull temperatures shouldn't get much higher than it is now, as long as we don't descend anymore. Relative inclination is down to 15 degrees just about, so we are making some good headway there. Little external view. So I guess what, we're over the Pacific Ocean right now. Let's take a look. Yes, we are. So not much to really look at out there. Okay, we shouldn't have to do this too much longer. We've passed the node. Let me pull up a line plane over here. Maybe it's easier for you to see. You can see we've actually passed the node, where the ascending node, where we lowered our orbit altitude.
24.
But that's okay. We're going to continue with this maneuver as long as relative inclination is coming down. We'll get that as close to 0 as we can until it gets at its lowest possible point. Then we're going to level off and do a burn to raise our periapsis back up above the surface of the planet. Let me go back to surface over here, monitor our vertical speed. So we're at 7,300 meters per second in ground speed, and our relative inclination, we have about 10 degrees to go. It doesn't look like we're going to get it right on 0 with this maneuver. We could go around and do it again, but I don't think we're going to have to do that. I think right now we're going to get it low enough that we've significantly reduced the burn time here. So hopefully that should be enough. I'm tempted to attempt time acceleration right now, but I'm not going to do it. Things can go wrong very quickly, and we're so close actually, so just hang in there. We're almost, looks like, you know, our radius vector will begin to spin here in not too long. Our rate of change is nice and high actually, so you can see how quickly relative inclination is coming down. I don't anticipate we'll have to maintain this much longer. We've already reduced the amount of time at our apoapsis to, or at the ascending node, which is also our around our apoapsis, to 53 seconds of burn time. So we're under 1 minute of burn time. That's great. And it looks like we'll be able to get it even lower than that. Okay, you can see the line of nodes here is beginning to pivot around on our radius vector, so we're probably reaching, yeah, the rate of change is reducing now. Yeah, I think we're reaching the lowest point here in just a moment. Yep. Okay, so we're pretty darn close to 0 there. Take it a little bit further here. Now, let me close this. Alright, there we go. Let's
23.
rotate around. Let me cancel out this elevator trim. Alright. Firing the main engines. We're going to raise our apoapsis back above the planet's surface there. We'll just get it safely up to around 250, 300 kilometers. It really doesn't matter because we're going to have to raise it up incredibly high anyways. So let's just get it safely above the atmosphere.
24.
So so we don't have any orbital decay at all. Alright, so we got our relative inclination within 3 degrees, so it looks like about 26 seconds of burning. It's not terrible. I would have liked to have gotten it a little lower, but I think that's low enough. We should be okay.
Mach 25.
Okay, there's 380 kilometers on our apoapsis. Hull temperature is too high to deploy the radiator just yet, so let's coast up here. We're at 65 kilometers in altitude actually, so we're getting a little bit of drag. You can see our apoapsis is going to drop just a bit, but we should be fine. Alright, so I think it's safe now to time accelerate as we coast up out of the atmosphere.
Mach 26.
Okay, hull temperature is just about low enough.
Mach 27.
Okay, that's low enough. We can go ahead and deploy the radiator. Okay, radiators deployed. AF control surfaces are off. APU is off. Let's see here. We can close this. Okay, we look good. And turn nav off. Alright, so I tell you what I'm going to do. We're going to go around and circularize the orbit. Actually, let me see. Let's see. Where are we? Let's go no target. So actually we're going to align the plane first. We'll hit the node first. So let's coast over to the descending node. Let's get the orbital plane aligned. We'll circularize the orbit, and then we'll pick up the next part with our plan to rendezvous with the XR5. So we are getting there. Let's time accelerate. So we're approaching the descending node, so of course we're going to burn orbit normal. Get a little bit closer. Okay, orbit normal, autopilot activated. Okay, we're approaching the node. And we're burning. Okay. Bring that up to a little translation. There we go, that's good enough. Alright, now we need to circularize the orbit. So, tell you what, I'm going to go to the glass cockpit view, and we'll pull up interplanetary to do that. Go to orbital. Alright, let's coast up to our apoapsis. APT counting down in seconds there. We got about 15 seconds or so out. All right, and there we go. Let's auto burn. There we go, we are circularized. Let's see, align plane. We're within reason, so we're good. Okay, so I will end this part here. We'll go ahead and pick up the next part, and we will plan our rendezvous with the XR5. So thank you guys again for watching. Be sure to subscribe for updates. Let me know what you thought about the videos and the larger MFDs as well. I know it's harder to see here in this panel view, but it is a really cool vessel. I do like the XR2 a lot with all of this stuff going on here. All right, thanks guys. Take care, and we'll catch you in the next video.